if you looked at the women's contributions, they mentioned Aspasia, right? Aspasia, and it mentioned somebody else.
The one, Freen.
Okay.
The one who threw
her clothes
on.
Right? And this is an interesting thing because women have been excluded from the rhetorical tradition. Really, we'll get into, about the time we get into the epistemologists, we'll start seeing things like he or she, right? Because there's suddenly people, the epistemologists really began in the 15th century. And there's suddenly this amazing realization that women have brains too. And that doesn't bring us anywhere close to equality. But like Francis Bacon and a few others are like, maybe women can also think. And that might be useful. So women were excluded from the rhetorical tradition as far as their contributions go, even well after that, as far as their theoretical contribution. But as far as rhetorical practice goes, women have always been talking, right? And so we don't have much, but you have Aspasia, and you have, I can't remember her name. She's new to me. I only read about her when I first read this edition of the book. So I wasn't familiar with her. But Aspasia I was familiar with because they'd always talked about her. She was Socrates' teacher.
Yeah.
She was Socrates' teacher. And she was also a prostitute. And so you'll see that as we go through and we look at women's contributions.
It doesn't come out and say that, but it definitely gives that impression.
She was. Oh yeah, it does. It says courtesan.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that word means prostitute.
Okay.
So
it does actually.
Yeah, it does. It outright says that. Courtesan means, well, it's not really quite the same. It's probably closer to like a Japanese geisha or something like that than anything we really. Although we do maybe a high-end escort, from what I've heard, the best escort services, they want the women to be college educated, right? Because you want to be able to carry on a good conversation, not just have sex with them. And so that's what they're looking for. And so it's kind of more like maybe a high-end escort would be what Aspasia was. And she's pretty important. The person who taught Socrates how to think. Whitehead is a Platonic scholar. I think he's dead. But he made the statement that's kind of famous and cited an awful lot, that all philosophy, all Western philosophy at least, is a footnote to Plato. And maybe that's a little extreme, but it's all definitely a response to Plato. And if it's a response to Plato, it's a response to Socrates. And if it's a response to Socrates, it's a response to Aspasia. So we don't really even have our Western tradition without Aspasia. But do we have anything she wrote? Could she write? I don't even know. I have no idea. She was a hooker.
So who taught Aspasia?
Well, she was probably taught by disciples of Corax and Tisius. But I don't know. We don't know that much about her. What we know about her is she was a courtesan. She was an alternative if you weren't interested in your wife. And she taught Socrates. That's what we know about her. Really. I mean, somehow Beth is able to write pages about that. But that's really what it comes down to. That's what we know.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty impressive that she can write that much. That's what we know. So she actually must have made some theoretical contributions, but we don't exactly know what they are. How it does it, because by the time it's Plato writing, how much of Aspasia got filtered out in Socrates and how much of Socrates gets filtered out in Plato, right? So we don't really We don't know. But the other one, the Freenite, I never Freenite thing. Never read about her until, if I did, maybe I read about her in Hesiod, but Hesiod writes these little short stories. 300, the movie, that's based on that much space, what Hesiod wrote. He wrote like a paragraph. So 300 people defended Greece against the Persians, 300 Spartans, and maybe we shall fight in the dark. That's in there, and made it into the movie. But how do you get a movie? And then they made a graphic novel on it, and the movie was based on the graphic novel. But how do you get from here to there? So it's a lot. But Hesiod, I might have read about her in Hesiod, but I don't remember it. So, but this is an important thing. That even if women are excluded from rhetorical theory, they're certainly still talking. And so they're not excluded from communication practice. And so you have a situation here where she throws off where her clothes are thrown off, and what that might have represented in the culture, and what it may not have represented. But this idea of the rhetoric of gesture, well, this is an example of it. And so you can see examples, and the first 1,000 years that we're going to look at, that's about all that women can be as examples, and that's not fair. But I am glad that this book is making an effort in this edition, which it didn't really make in previous editions. It was making an effort in this edition to at least bring in women's rhetorical practice, because it is really true that women were excluded from philosophy for a very long time, and from rhetoric. So yeah, to point that out, you said you hope you see more of women's contributions. For the first 1,000 years, the first 1,500 years, the first 2,000 years, you're not going to see much theoretical contribution. When we get into the early proto-feminist and feminist movements, so we get into the 16th century, you're going to start seeing women actually making theoretical contributions. But again, just like Aspasia is a prostitute, right? You're going to see early on that the women who were able to make these contributions, it was at the sacrifice of having any kind of family life. And instead.
Right, because they thought it canceled out one another, right? Like if you were making contributions, they
Right.
thought it was like ruining your capabilities to have children.
Yeah, it was at that
Yeah.
cost. So you'll even find that one, especially in the proto-feminists. These are women who either their husbands die, or they are also prostitutes, or they're just they decide to forego family life in order to focus on intellectual life. And so you're not going to see a huge amount more for the next, but they do try. They're really working to try and find women's examples. And then when we get into the contemporary rhetoric, some of those chapters are written by women theorists, right? And they refer to women theorists all the time. And a lot of times you have people working together like Perlman and Albrecht, and one's a man, one's a woman, and it's not even an issue. And that's by the 1940s. So it's not even, there are women scholars at that point. But yeah, it's really, really true that there wasn't a lot. And this is to bring in these two, it's kind of a stretch even, So we don't know what Aspasia taught.
Yeah, and this whole part about freeing is just kind of mind-boggling. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is weird too, because breasts have a different function in Greek culture. Although that is interesting to note, because then when you see the Greco-Roman statues and you realize there are those bare breasts, and you're like, they were sexualizing these women. no, breasts weren't sexual. They
They
were
had
babies.
magic.
Right.
Well,
Magic
and they
power.
kind of do have magic powers, actually. I mean, isn't it amazing that you see these fat babies? All they do is suckle at breasts. That's pretty magic. It really kind of is. It's not magic as we really have. So all of that I think is interesting. I do want to get into, you mentioned in the discussion board, you mentioned Aristotle's conception of audience, right? You mentioned that, and so I wanted to go in as soon as you did that, because one of the things I want to see done in the discussion is synthesis, which means bringing in different ideas and bringing them together. So what I added to that was that I wanted to, I should also be thinking about the Platonic conception of audience. But I thought what I want to talk about, if we could here, is kind of some basic differences in the way that Plato thought and the way that Aristotle thought. And I thought an interesting way that we could illustrate that is to look at a picture. I'm going to switch it around so that I zoom, showing full screen, so that we are sharing screen so that we can do that later. Share screen. Let's see. Share screen. Share that screen. So anyway, this is a picture. Have any of you seen this picture before? Familiar with it?
I might have seen it in
I've
an
seen it
art
before.
class or something.
Yeah, this is Raphael, not the Ninja Turtle, but the one the Ninja Turtle was named after. His conception of Athens, and it actually is architecturally is from Athens, but the people he drew didn't even all live at the same time. So among the people he drew, if we want to get in, if we look at it, he drew here in the center. He made them the center because they are kind of the center of Western thought. Two people who he called Plato and Aristotle. He also drew Socrates. He's down right here. It's supposed to be Socrates. And all the people in here are famous Greek thinkers, mathematicians, astronomers, whatever they were. All the people in the whole thing. But at the center, you have Aristotle and Plato. And what he did here, fascinatingly, look at their hands. You see how they're holding out their hands?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's supposed to be Plato. Well, Plato was a professional wrestler, and his name wasn't even Plato. He had a different name. I can't remember what it was. But he went by Plato. That was his professional name, and it means shoulders. So I doubt he looked like this wimpy guy. But anyway, but this is supposed to be Plato and Aristotle. And see that their hands is, I think, the interesting thing here. See how Plato's hands, right? Plato's pointing up,
Right.
and Aristotle's pointing out. And I think this is a good place to try and understand the differences in Platonic and Aristotelian thought, which are important because really, they say all philosophies of footnote. Plato was Aristotle's teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything Aristotle did is a response to Plato, but it really does create two divergent themes. And these divergent things, they come up in that concept of audience. And that is, for Plato, the concept of the Platonic form. Have we learned about the Platonic form anywhere? Is that part about it? Platonic forms are this idea that there is truth in the minds of the gods, right? So I'm a man. Maybe you're a man. We're all men, right? But if you look at us, we're different, right? We have different skin tones, we're different heights, different weights, right? We're all men. But for Plato, he would say that that's because we're comparing the perfect man to us. And you can say we're more like a perfect man than another person is. And you can take any man and say he's more or less perfect by comparing it to this idea of the forms in the minds of the gods. And so Plato had this idea of an absolute truth. An absolute truth. And this really informed everything that Plato did. This absolute truth, this truth in terms of forms. And this concept of truth in terms of forms was a variation from the pre-Socratics or the Sophists, right? The Sophists probably didn't believe there was any truth. That truth is what you make it, right? That if I can convince you, I always think it's funny. I'm 5'11". They measure me at the doctor every time I go in, and I pretty much stay 5'11". But I meet all these guys who are 6 foot and shorter than me. But they say, I'm 6 foot tall. I'm like, I'm 5'11", and I can see the top of your head. So there it is. The pre-Socratics, the Sophists would say, how tall are you? Well, what does it say on your driver's license? At which case I'm about 40 pounds lighter. That's what I always told they were. But you put that on there, and it's what you can convince people of. That's what's true. Truth is what you can convince people of. People compare the pre-Socratics and the Sophists to modern day postmodernists, and say modern day contemporary postmodernists. That'll make a lot more sense to us. But contemporary postmodernists who will say that truth is socially constructed. But they actually, I guess maybe they would have thought that too, but they saw society as a smaller thing. Right? If you can get a group of people to believe something, it is true. And that's why, and then they come in and they meet Socrates, and then eventually Plato. And Plato, so you have this idea of truth as we'll go ahead and say it's socially constructed, but was socially constructed as a much smaller idea of what society is than what postmodern thinking says truth is socially constructed. But it's not like we can get 10 of you to have a truth for yourself. Right? We have to have society believing something is true for it to be true in postmodern. But they saw it socially constructed. And they come up against Plato. And Plato sees truth as being absolute, that if something is true, it's true. And in order to arrive at this idea of absolutes, you have to have this idea of the form. You have the perfect form out there. You have, this is a chair, but in the minds of a god, there's a perfect chair. Right? There's a perfect chair, and we compare it, everything we sit on, to that perfect chair that the gods have revealed to us. And we say, this is like that perfect chair. This is not the perfect chair. This is just a chair. But it's like that perfect chair in the minds of gods. And so we compare it, and say it's like that. So there is an absolute out there. And when he would make these arguments, it had, and this is rational, the absolute's always rational, it's perfectly rational, it's perfectly reasonable, all these things. So when he comes to concepts like audience, you're dealing with audience on the discussion. When it comes to conceptions like audience, Plato didn't ask us to talk to audiences the way the pre-Socratics would be, which would be, I can create truth with you, right? If I can convince you that I'm beautiful, I must be beautiful, at least to you. Plato would say, no, there is beauty, real beauty out there. And so he focuses on the philosophical audience. And so when we're engaged in rhetoric from a Platonic perspective, you have this philosophical audience, which is a perfect audience. If you had people who had studied this and they were rational and they were good, they would be a perfect audience. And when you speak, you should speak, in Plato's opinion, to the perfect audience, to this philosophical audience, to an audience of philosophers and kings. Those are who you're talking to. And so maybe right now, I'm talking to you people who are just students, right? But I should be speaking as though I was speaking to the philosophers and kings, right? Or to the philosopher kings. That's how I should be addressing you. And if it goes over your head, that's just because you're not there yet, right? And that's too bad. But that's Plato's philosophical audience. And Aristotle brings in a different idea of audience. You quoted from the book, a certain kind of man, a certain kind of person that Aristotle's interested in. This is the other way of saying it. Really, these three ways of constituting. This is a good word to use, constituting. Right? That's where I'm going to write it down. C-O-N-S-T-I. Constituting is a really good rhetorical word. It's a word we use a lot in rhetoric, and it's kind of to build something as a concept and then use it as an idea. So we have two constitutions of audience. You have the socially constructed audience. If your audience is whoever you can get to believe you, basically. Right? You have the truthist form. You've got the philosophical audience, that there is absolute truth, and those who are informed, you should speak to people as informed people. And then you have the Aristotelian audience, which I call a demographic audience. Now, real, true demographics, like you learn in your business classes, they take statistics. We have to do statistics in order to do real demographics. And statistics, in order for statistics to come into being, we have to have Newton, who develops calculus. And calculus is a way of measuring change. And from calculus, you can create algebraic formulas that we use to do statistics. But statistics doesn't exist without calculus, so Aristotle didn't do any. He didn't understand. But this concept of demographics, it really starts here. You have a particular audience, and that's maybe another way of doing it. You have a particular audience. And we're going to find that concept, these three concepts actually, but more this and this, recurring as we go through. We're going to find two concepts of audience as we go through, and it affects everything. It affects everything. It affects your ability when you're engaged in advertisement, right? You're engaged in advertisement. Who do you want to focus this on? Do you want to focus it on a particular demographic? Or do you want to focus it on reasonable people, all of them? Right? Who is it you're selling to? Who is it you're dealing with? And I'm kind of a pragmatist. And so I think both, right? You want to have some things where you focus on the particular audience you're in, and you want to have sometimes you focus on the more, what we'll eventually start calling the universal audience. But it's both, right? So, like for those of you who are taking the mass media class last semester, and we looked at AP style. Why does AP style exist? Well, it's because people who were in the early days of journalism really focused on those Platonic forms. And they're not writing to a particular person. They're writing to anyone who cares to be informed, right? And so you avoid a lot of the language that you would use if you were talking to a particular audience. And some of the things that we've talked about is, why does this particular publication break that rule? Well, it breaks that rule because
They can.
well, because they can't, but because they're taking a more Aristotelian form. They're saying, no, we're not speaking to humanity universal. We're speaking to people between the ages of 18 and 35. And that's who we're talking to. We're speaking to this particular group, and so we're going to make an alteration that fits for this group that wouldn't fit universal. And I think this concept, the Platonic form, there is an absolute. Now Aristotle never denies that. Aristotle, and if you read his metaphysics, he believes there is absolute truth. Not quite the same way that Plato did. He doesn't believe in forms or anything like that. But he has a concept of like a prime mover, that everything has a start, that everything has an essence. He also wrote about physics, and he had some confused ideas. He thought that, like, if you drop a feather and a ball at the same time, the ball will go down faster because the ball has more downness in it than a feather does. And a feather doesn't have as much downness, so it doesn't go down as much. So it doesn't have as much essence of downness. So he kind of has a different conception of absolute, but he does believe in absolute, and he's not focused on the social reality of the pre-sophists, the pre-Socratic sophists. He wouldn't be comfortable with alternative facts showing up in the media or alternative facts. He wouldn't be comfortable with those. The sophists would. They would say, great. Yeah. If you can convince people, then you've got alternative facts. And eventually we'll find people like Foucault who make, in the contemporary area, kind of a similar argument. What is truth? Truth is what we can convince people of. And that's postmodernism to a large extent. In this electronic world, do I know how many people were in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, God.
I sure wasn't there. So I'm getting my facts from somebody, and I can either trust the media or I can trust the president. They say I have alternative versions. I can't believe both. That's very postmodern, right? That happens in the electronic era more and more, that we see this going back to what was actually before Plato. What's true? Well, you can convince people of that's what's true.
But we have pictures now.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not a form of proof?
Well, Aristotle's the one interested in forms of proof, right?
Okay, so they don't care about
proof. Right? Aristotle is interested in forms of proof, and Aristotle has the concept of the inartistic proof, and that's right, Marvel. What you're saying there with the is that not a form of proof? Aristotle, I think, really did a good job combining. I'm really biased. I like Aristotle a lot. And so I'm trying, and I do like Plato a lot too. I really, really do. Without Plato, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I mean, reading his Republic was a life-changing event for me. And you should read his Republic. It's long though, so we're not going to do it in this class. But yeah, Plato's really important. I really like Aristotle. I feel like his ethics, Aristotle's ethics, are you take two extremes and the middle is what's good. So the example I teach a lot to the undergrads when I'm doing public speaking, and to the lower level students when I'm doing public speaking, is I have the idea of cowardliness and foolhardiness, and then I just taught that a few minutes ago, and in the middle is bravery, right? that if you don't prepare for a speech because you're just like, I got this, that's foolhardy. You need to prep. And if you do, if you're like so scared that you can't do it, that's cowardliness. And the middle is bravery. And so he was really focused on the truth is finding the middle. And so he tried to find a middle in between what he had learned from Plato and what was more common then was, I mean, Plato was the only one teaching the Platonic forms when Plato was around, because he was the only Plato that there was. We didn't have a bunch of Platonists then, because we just had Plato. So we had Plato teaching the Platonic forms, and he tried to find a balance. And this idea of proof, you know, in Aristotle you have the artistic and the inartistic proofs. And what you're saying is, don't we have pictures now? Aren't those a form of proof? And Aristotle would say, yeah, that's an inartistic proof. But inartistic proof doesn't necessarily mean that it's a Platonic form, that it's absolute proof. An inartistic proof is something that you can put out there and people either believe it or they don't. Okay. So, do we all have driver's licenses? Mm-hmm. So, you ever known anybody who had a driver's license and the year on there wasn't actually the year they were born?
Yeah, I've known people with fake IDs.
That's precisely right. You got their fake IDs. So if you show me, and I already said on my driver's license, it says I'm about 30 pounds lighter than I am.
I'm a little taller in my driver's license.
A little taller, and I see a lot of people saying, so this is getting back to the driver's license there. This is an Aristotelian form of proof. If I hand you my driver's license, you can either say this is true or this is not true. That's how an inartistic proof is. And that's how a picture is. You can look at a picture, and the Trump campaign says it looks like there are fewer people at my inauguration because of the white tarps we put down because of the rain. And so you see more white space, or you see no white space at Obama's inauguration because they just used grass. So he says the picture is not true. And so you look at the picture, and you either believe it or you don't. And that's how an inartistic proof is. And so Aristotle wouldn't necessarily say just because something is an inartistic proof that it's absolute truth. Now, Plato would tell us there were a certain number of people there. And that's the truth. And what we should do as communicators is we should engage in dialectic. Dialectic is this way, as this like dialogue. They have the same root words in a lot of it. But dialectic is where we'll take different points of view and we'll argue those points of view. And what we come to in the course of our argument is what's true. That's probably closer to what's true. We still wouldn't have said that's what's true. But we've probably gotten closer to what's the absolute truth in the form of the gods. And the gods know exactly how many people were in Washington, D.C. at the monument at the National Mall that day. The gods know. I don't. You don't. But the gods do. And if we argue, and so arguing is really important to Plato. Really, really important. If we argue, we can come to truth. And that's true. I mean, like my wife and I'll have arguments on a regular basis. And usually, if things go well, by the end, we kind of realize we were both sort of wrong. Okay. I have a different attitude towards that she does. I love it when she proves me wrong. And that's the Platonist in me. It's like, yes, now I know the truth. Right? Now I know, because I was wrong before and now I can be right, and I like to be right. We had an argument over a particular pronunciation of a word. The cattle teats. I called them teats. And she said, no, they're tits. And I said, they're teats. And so we looked it up in the dictionary, and it turns out you can pronounce it either way. But by far the most common pronunciation is teats. So what? Now we know the truth. Why? Because we got in a fight. A stupid fight. We're very passionate about it. Probably could have ended our marriage over it if it hadn't been for the internet. Thank goodness for that. But there it was, and now we're closer to the truth. That's the Platonic way, and that's what communication is about. Communication for Plato is to bring people closer to the truth. So if you're going to do advertising or you're going to do anything like that, is to bring people closer to the truth. And that's what really, really matters to you. For Aristotle, is the picture true or is it not? If it's an inartistic proof, you just put it out there and you say, this is the picture. I don't believe the picture. Well, there's nothing I can do there. There's an Aristotelian in me, GMOs are safe. They are perfectly safe. How do I know that? Peer-reviewed research. GMOs are safe, vaccines are safe, and genes change over time, sometimes giving advantageous mutations that are then brought to more generations because they are advantageous. I look at these things, I can't sit there and argue evolution's not true. I can't, because I accept these inartistic proofs. And I have to. I can't say that vaccines aren't safe because all the peer-reviewed research says they're safe. And I can find stuff on Google where they say peer-reviewed research is only believable because there's a conspiracy. There's a conspiracy. And doctors are just out to make money. But have you ever met anybody who doesn't want money? So that's a pretty reasonable argument, right? Professors who are doing these articles. I always think about that. Sam Kay, who was here before he has moved on to another school, but he worked here in our chemistry department, and right here at Western New Mexico University 2 years ago, he developed a new cure for certain kinds of skin cancer. Right over there at Arlen Hall with their bad equipment. He did, and he published it. And I was thinking, Sam makes a lot more money than me. He was making like $60,000 a year. But is $60,000 a year enough to hide a cure for cancer if he found one? No. They're saying marijuana cures cancer. If it did, Bob Marley wouldn't have died of lung cancer because he smoked a lot of marijuana. So, I believe the peer review, but when I throw them out there from an Aristotelian perspective, and I say, well, this is what the peer-reviewed articles say, and people say, yeah, I don't believe those. What can I do? Can I have an argument? Plato would say I need to keep arguing. I need to show that, and that maybe they're partly right, and maybe I'm partly right. When we find that, if we'll have a good enough argument. But Aristotle would just say, at that point, what do you have? They reject your inartistic proofs. Now, he also had this concept of artistic proofs. You learned those logos, ethos, pathos, and assume you're pretty familiar with those terms from a few different places. Those are something the rhetor, him or herself, can go out there. But this comes from a different idea of truth, and this is three different ideas, and we're going to see these three different ideas: a completely socially constructed truth that we really see in the pre-Socratics. You're going to see this different conception of truth has all kinds as we go through. You're going to see certain people when we get into discussions of the sublime. Right, we're going to come into something. The people who really wrote a lot about the sublime, believed that the sublime existed as a real experience that you could have. That you could have this overwhelming experience of the infinity of the universe, and it was something that you could point to, and it was real. That's very Platonic, very, very Platonic. And you'll have other times where you're having people say, okay, this is how we can, these are some proofs. We're going to have people dealing with different kinds of syllogisms and different stuff like that, actually even at the same time. Very Aristotelian. And we're always going to have this theme. We would place it now in a lot of our postmodernism, but if you look at Romanticism in the 18th century, this concept of the poems is beauty is truth and truth is beauty, and that's all we need to know. And so truth is whatever we convince ourselves is beautiful. If it's not pretty, it's not true. So we're going to see these three going through. So I think these were important chapters because they are so foundational. So is there anything else that as you went through these that you really, because we started out talking about the role of women, which wasn't something I was going to bring up today, but since it was interesting and since you mentioned it, Angela, it's like, well, yeah, this is something to talk about. There are other things that as we went through, you found they're really, as you went through this, like, well, this is the way it was, and this is the way it is.
I had trouble on those discussions between those two guys, and Aristotle like recorded them.
No, Plato recorded. Plato recorded.
Those conversations are hard to follow.
Were they?
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the dialogic form, but or you just have the name.
Maybe just because they've spoken maybe like difficulter language than
Well,
like
that's a translator, and I'm sure that if I were the writer of a textbook, or even if I'm just trying to write an article, sometimes I'll use an older translation because it's in the public domain and I don't have to pay for it. And so I think that might be that's more of a translation problem. It's more of a translation problem.
Yeah.
That this is maybe language that we wouldn't necessarily always use. But just realize Socrates, when he's speaking to these sophists, is using a lot of irony and a lot of sarcasm. So read it in your ironic, sarcastic voice when you read Socrates. And the sophists, the way Plato constructed them, that would be, to argue that Plato's just making his construction, would go against his own philosophy. But anyway, the way that they were just too stupid to realize that he was being sarcastic. So you have to read those down. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask them if they had a co-lead. You guys had a co-lead or yes?
I don't have a co-leader on mine.
Do you want one?
Can I have one? Oh, do you want a co-leader?
Yeah, I don't.
He doesn't have one.
Yeah, so you do that. Mine's not.
I don't know if I even thought it was.
Okay, you gotta find one. You gotta find somebody who you can either co-lead with or something.
Because I know I was supposed to put that in.
Oops.
I'll have to check.
But yeah, everybody should, I really want everybody to lead one of the discussions.